Breitbart News has just published a leaked internal document from Google titled The Good Censor, which shows that the company plans to move away from the American tradition of free speech towards a more European model that values dignity over liberty and civility over freedom. So in today's video, we're going to break down exactly what this means and what both on the left and the right of the political spectrum can expect moving forward. But just before we do, I want to remind you that we have a Patreon page at patreon.com/pressfortruth, and we need your support now more than ever, as we are currently in the crosshairs of this censorship campaign, and they could pull the plug at any moment, just like they did to Alex Jones. So if you appreciate our efforts here to counter the propaganda coming from the mainstream media, please consider signing up here for a monthly contribution. We don't have any major funding or corporate sponsorships like the MSM does, but what we have is you. So thank you so much to anyone who has joined. We can't do this work without you. And to everyone else, please check the links in the description below if you would like to contribute. Alright, so in 2015, an interesting thing happened at Google following their corporate restructuring under the conglomerate Alphabet Inc. Their motto went from "don't be evil" to "do the right thing." Just think about that for a sec. Was "don't be evil" too black and white for them? Have they determined that some things can still be evil, but right? Pun intended? This is the internal document that was leaked to Breitbart News asking the question, can Google protect free speech and police harmful content? This report is the result of several layers of research, they say. They also say they've worked with cultural leaders and local observers to deepen their understanding, working with leading thinkers in the space, and they're apparently going to examine the importance of free speech, bad behavior and censorship online, fighting back against bad behavior online, tech firms, free speech or censorship, and how do people want Google to respond to this predicament? Well, Google seems to already know. As Breitbart shows in their article, the briefing labels the ideal of unfettered free speech on the internet a utopian narrative that is being undermined by recent global events as well as bad behavior on the part of users. It can be read in full below. It acknowledges that major tech platforms, including Google, Facebook, and Twitter, initially promised free speech to consumers. This free speech ideal was installed in the DNA of the Silicon Valley startups that now control the majority of our online conversations, says the document. The briefing argues that Google, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter are caught between two incompatible positions: the unmediated marketplace of ideas versus well-ordered spaces for safety and civility. The first approach is described as a product of the American tradition, which prioritizes free speech for democracy, not civility. The second is described as a product of the European tradition, which favors dignity over liberty and civility over freedom. The briefing claims that all tech platforms are now moving towards the European tradition. And I would argue that dignity over liberty and civility over freedom is a dangerous precedent to set. On page 2, the briefing states that users are asking if the openness of the internet should be celebrated after all, and that free speech has become a social, economic, and political weapon. On page 12, the briefing says the early free speech ideals of the internet were utopian. And on page 14, the document admits that Google, along with Twitter and Facebook, now control the majority of online conversations. And according to Breitbart News, between the pages of 26 and 34, the briefing explains how users behaving badly undermines free speech on the internet and allows crummy politicians to expand their influence. The briefing bemoans that racists, misogynists, and oppressors are allowed a voice alongside revolutionaries, whistleblowers, and campaigners. It warns that users are keener to transgress moral norms behind the protection of anonymity. On page 45, the briefing bemoans the fact that the internet has until recently been a level playing field, warning that rational debate is damaged when authoritative voices and have-a-go commentators receive equal weighing. The document accuses President Trump of spreading the conspiracy theory that Google autocomplete suggestions unfairly favored Hillary Clinton in 2016. And in fact, Trump's suspicions were actually correct. Independent research has shown that Google did favor Clinton in 2016. And it goes on about the alleged Russian election interference with a picture of Donald Trump, and it basically concludes by saying, the briefing sums up the reasons for big tech's shift towards censorship, including the need to respond to regulatory demands and expand globally, to monetize content through its organization, and to protect advertisers from controversial content and increase revenues. So Google has essentially appointed itself the gatekeepers of political thought and ideology, and therefore they can and do shift the global moods and thoughts and opinions to an area that's going to be beneficial to the oligarchy, or the deep state, or as I like to call them, the puppet string pullers. So what do we do about this? Do we lobby for an internet bill of rights to ensure our freedoms online? Hell no! The answer is not to look to the government, who's in bed with these corporations, to solve all the problems that were created by the government and these major conglomerates. The answer, my friends, is to embolden users to explore the free market, where alternative platforms have already risen and are currently thriving, like Gab, which was even mentioned in this document as a major platform for people who are dissatisfied with the current state of censorship. Or one of my personal favorites, Steemit.com, which uses blockchain technology to ensure that your content can never be memory holed. Others like BitChute.com and Minds.com are great blockchain-based websites that will ensure your content can never be censored, and like Steemit.com, they also offer cryptocurrencies that pay you to post good content. So let's not sink to their level and have them regulated or eradicated from the internet altogether, but rather let's focus on these platforms in the free market that truly support free speech, even for those opinions that you completely despise. Please click on that like button if you found this information to be useful, and don't forget to check the links in the description for all the sources to this video and to find out how you can join us as a PFT member or a PFT patron. That's all for today. Thanks for watching, my friends. Stay tuned for more video reports coming soon. This is Dan Dix reporting for Press for Truth. We all want truth. The truth will set you free.